And hello everyone, welcome to Red Modeling Paint Studios PaintCast. Good Sunday afternoon to you all. Welcome here. I know I'm starting a little bit earlier than I had intended to, but this week was just so crazy with the power outages and work responsibilities that I wanted to get going on this. It's been too long since I've been on, so thanks for being here everyone, and glad you can make it, and thanks for watching. What I want to do is we're going to get right into working on Issyra, getting some stuff done on her. Anthony, I know that last time we were on the air we had talked about color scheme a little bit, and I want to make a couple changes. And I've got your paint card here to show you kind of what I'm talking about. Let me set that one aside so I don't get that mixed up. Of course, the base color we did was Great Coat Gray. You can see that right in the middle there. And we hadn't settled on a highlight color, so what I'm going to do is I'm looking at using Troll Blood Highlight, which is right here, to work into the highlight a little bit. I think that blends nicely there. And then for the shade color, what we had done was we had went with the Umbral Umber Coal Black mixture that I use a lot. I want to change that up. I actually want to go with this mixture for the shade, and it's actually equal parts Exile Blue and Umbral Umber. It gives a little bit more of a cooler color to the shadow, and I think is going to contrast better with the oranges that we're going to have that are going to be worked into here. So with that in mind, let's get going on Issyra and make some stuff happen here. So let me make sure my focus is set. That looks good. And color looks good. Just take that off just a little bit. And this is where we left off last week. What we had done was applied the Great Coat Gray color all around there, and I airbrushed a little bit of bloodstone onto the cloak here. And what we'll work on today is actually getting this cloak finished out, including adding the orange bits in here, and then also the shading as well. And then I want to try and work on the orange on these armor plates here, how we had talked about doing this middle of the 3 plates in the orange color. So with that in mind, let's get going right on that orange right away. So bloodstone, not blood tracker brown, if I said that wrong. So I want to start with some bloodstone. Again, this was the color, if you remember, that we'd used to airbrush on the cloak. And what I want to do, any of the orange parts that you're going to be painting on your model, we're going to do in this, the first coat is going to be bloodstone. Okay, so get some on your wet palette. And we had talked about making these inner parts of her cloak right here, doing that in the orange. So I'm just going to start working that base color into there. And then we also talked about these tassels here being the orange as well. So I'm just going to get a couple of smooth, fairly thin layers on in preparation for the actual orange color that we'll paint on. The thing to remember with the orange, Anthony, is you don't want to you want to make sure and keep your contrast fairly mild when it comes to orange, because you'll start to lose the effect. Okay, so the trick is going to be to apply enough shadow and enough highlight so that people look at it and say, oh, that's orange, but then also not so much shadow and highlight that you end up having a brown or a yellow. So we've got to really kind of stay in that middle zone there. So, and that's one of the reasons why I think this will look nice with the gray, because the gray tone is going to be so muted that the orange will really pop quite nice against it. Nice thing about this gray too is that going back and cleaning things up is going to be a cinch with this, because Great Coat Gray has such great coverage that it'll be easy to do. Now with the cloak that's underneath these orange tabards that we're painting, or this orange trim that we're painting, we really want to make sure and have a lot of contrast on that cloak and really work that cloak into the browns, so that way this orange will contrast very nicely against it. And now we want to work on this center armor, or this middle armor plate here. Also, guys, just a heads up for those of you that are watching live, Sundays, and I don't know what it is about Sundays, but Sundays I always notice that the Twitch channel gets really laggy. I think a lot of people stream on Sundays, and so it puts a lot of burden on the servers, on the Twitch servers. So, you know, if there does end up being some lag and things do get a little choppy, just make sure and check out the video on YouTube here in a couple days, so that way you can see what you might have missed. And speaking of YouTube, I have got like 5 or 6 videos that I've got to upload of stuff that I've already produced from previous PaintCasts. Probably going to get those up tonight before I go to bed. I'll probably just put them to download, you know, through the night. So tomorrow I should have quite a few more videos on my YouTube channel for you guys to watch. All right. And you already see how that's going to look. You know, where those oranges are going to be. I think it's going to look really nice, Anthony. Okay, so let's move on to the orange. And for the orange, obviously the base color, these are the 3 colors that we're going to use, Anthony. Bloodstone, Cowder Red Highlight, and Heartfire. Okay, and we want to stay mostly in this area with the orange, mostly in the Cowder Red Highlight area. Okay, we don't want to get too far over into the Heartfire, and we don't want to get too far over into the Bloodstone, because then we'll have too much contrast. So we want to stay right in this middle area there. And the way we're going to put this on is we're going to glaze it on. Okay, and I've done a little bit of glazing before on PaintCast, and you know, this is probably what I've seen the best method for applying orange. I have yet to find an orange paint that I like 100%. The P3 stuff is fairly good. I'm thinking about trying some of the Vallejo game color oranges to see what I think of those, and their air oranges. But I have yet to find one that I really like. Two-brush blending with them sometimes can be a challenge because they thin out so quick. So I find that just glazing with them is really what works the best, at least for me. So that's what we're going to do today. Now, with the glazing of the orange, once you've got a nice, solid, smooth coat of the Bloodstone applied, you're going to want to apply an initial layer of the P3 Cowder Red Highlight. Okay, and that you're going to use to cover probably about 90% of the Bloodstone. You're not going to cover it in one pass. It's going to take 2 or 3 consecutive glazes for the color to start to build up. What I'm doing for this glaze is I'm just mixing it with a little bit of water on my wet palette, and by a little bit I mean like 1 drop of paint to like maybe a half a drop of water. And on my hand here you can see how thin that orange is, how it's behaving. And then on Issyra, definitely the tips of this tabard here are what's going to have the most intense orange going on. So that's where I'm going to focus on these first couple glazes. What you want to try to avoid is excessive pooling of the paint when you're doing this type of a technique. And again, we're trying to cover about 90% of the surface at this with these first few layers. And we're just slowly building that orange color up. And it's going to take a couple of passes to make it happen, because the orange is so thin. Now on this these shoulder pads, you're going to want to pull your brush in the direction so that your brush stroke is ending at the end of the shoulder pad. Try to use when you're painting like this the side of the brush as much as possible. You already see you already see how that's starting to look on that shoulder pad. That looks pretty cool, man. I gotta say, I'm already a fan of this paint scheme. In fact, honestly, Anthony, I may still it and use it on some cat ore that I want to paint for myself. I picked up the Cador all-in-one army box, and I've been thinking about how I'm going to paint him. And as I've been playing around with these colors the last few weeks, trying to find a combination that I like for you, I've kind of grown fond of it myself, and I think it would look really good on Cador. I'm just going to keep working this color down into here where these highlights are. Someone's asking in chat room, what's the worst color scheme someone's ever asked me to paint? I gotta think about that one for a minute. When Retribution first came out, their studio scheme is white, and a lot of people were really struggling with white. How to get a good solid white base coat down, and create the effect like that they have on the studio scheme there. And I'd never painted a fully white army before, and I picked up a commission. This was several years ago, just like I say, right when they came out. I picked up a commission to paint a Retribution army, and painting white on that scale really does suck. So that would probably be my answer, is painting the white Retribution studio scheme. To get white to go through an airbrush or to hand brush, with any consistency, requires a lot of thinning, so that thinning also diminishes the paint's ability to cover. So it just was a very time-consuming process. So that's why I didn't like it. Alright, you can start to see now the orange really kind of taking a hold now. It's looking pretty good. Alright, I'm going to work a little more orange right underneath here. I think we're getting pretty close to where we want to be. Alright, that looks better. Okay. Alright, now to highlight this, we're going to use the straight Heartfire. And we're going to apply this in a very similar manner as we were doing the orange. Although the Heartfire, you don't need to thin nearly as much, Anthony. It's already coming out of the bottle fairly thin. And we'll start on the shoulder pads here. And you just want to use the side of your brush and just stick right to the edge of that armor plate. Kind of doing an old Gaines Workshop style paint job here, where you just kind of highlight the edge there. Alright, you see how that looks? And that's probably as far as you want to take that armor plate. So that looks pretty good. Work now on the other side. Alright, and there's your shoulder plates there. Looking pretty good. You don't want to overdo it with the heart fire because then you start pushing into the yellows. So really, you know, you're just trying to give it a nice solid pop, nice solid contrast there. So don't push the orange too far into the yellow when you do that. If you do, you can always mix up some orange ink out of, you know, red ink and yellow ink, and kind of pull it back. But it's a lot easier to not have to do that. Than to just, you know, slowly build the orange up. We're gonna have to do something on the edges of this tabard here because we want to create a way for the eye to differentiate between the two parts of the cloak there. So I'm using just the straight heart fire to do that, but I think it's a little too bold. So let me mix in a little bit of orange, a little bit of the Cowder red highlight there, and just kind of soften that down a bit. That's better. Okay. Same thing here. Try and keep the heart fire color fairly central on here. And you just remember using it just to highlight with, so you don't want to go, you know, full coverage on this. You're only going to kind of highlight where or place it where the highlights would be, and using the other colors behind it to create the shadowing effect. Okay, and take some of my mixture of Cowder red highlight and heart fire, and we're going to line cloak here, or the tabard section of her cloak rather. Add a little more orange to that. Still just a little too much yellow in that. There we go. We're going to add some shadow to these edges too, just to give them a little bit of variety. Have them follow the natural highlighting and shadowing that's already going on there. Okay, so you can see how that's looking. Looking pretty good. I'm liking what we're getting so far. Kind of working into here. Okay. And then work the edge a little bit. Right. I'm going to start emphasizing some of the shadows now. So I'm going to take some very thin glazes of bloodstone. 1 second, guys. Okay, can you go outside? I'm working now, please. Close the door. Close the door, please. Thank you. Sorry, I had a little toddler interruption there. Back to what I was saying, I'm going to emphasize some of the shadows now, taking some very thinned out bloodstone. And I just want to kind of work this little edge here between the edge of the tabard and the actual cloak itself, and kind of reestablish some of that shading there. And then same thing in here. Down in here. And then in here. Looks pretty good. Same thing here, but we're going to work kind of upwards with it. Back up into here. And then I'm going to take a little bit more bloodstone, this time just a little bit thicker, and just glaze some of the edges of this armor. So that way, or the edges of the tabard, excuse me. So that way you're adding to the overall effect there. Okay. And then if we wanted to kind of reestablish some of the shadows up here on this armor plate, again, just pull a thin glaze or two of the original bloodstone color right along that edge. We're probably going to use something darker, like add a little bit of umber to this or something when we get to the final stages. But just for now, this will work just fine. It just kind of helps reestablish that shadow a little bit more. Okay, and there's our oranges on the model. I think that's looking really cool, Anthony. Actually, I do want to add a little more shadow into here. So I'm going to pull it up that way. And I'm just using this, for this I'm just using very thin glazes of bloodstone and just pulling it upwards to where the shadow would be. Smoothing some of this out a little bit. Again, you don't want the contrast to get too crazy on the orange. So let's move on now to a little bit of the gray and make some stuff happen there. So again, what I had said, I went from my initial recommendation of coal black and umbral umber to exile blue and umbral umber. I think that'll produce a better shading color for you. So this we're also going to glaze on. When we get to Imperatus, that's when I'll talk about doing two brush blending and whatnot. But for the most part, since she's so tiny, we're going to do a lot of this with just glazing. So I'm mixing some of this up on my wet palette, 1 drop of each, and then just a little bit of water, probably a drop or so of water, to give us the nice shade color that we're looking for. And there we go. That'll look pretty good. It stays in the blue family, so so that will complement nice with this orange. I'm just going to start right underneath here on her stomach and just pull this up right into there. Get rid of that hard edge by just slowly, lightly dragging your brush across it and just softening that edge out. That creates our first layer of highlight, our shadow there. On the breastplate of the armor there, we're just going to kind of follow a line all the way around. Okay, I want to take a less thin version of the paint, and we're going to paint the inside of this armor plate right here before we get her head in there. And then the same thing on this side. Thin some of this out. We're just going to wash or glaze right around here, these parts of the armor. The one thing that painting with gray does present a challenge on, Anthony, is kind of knowing how far to take your highlight, how far to take your shadow, because the gray against gray is sometimes a little hard to tell, and so it can be a little bit of an issue, kind of seeing where you have to apply more shadow at, or more highlight at. Well, highlight would be easy. It's the shadow that I'm talking about here. Just using the shadow color to just kind of clean up the edge here around the orange. I think where we'll really start to see this gray pop is when we start adding some highlights in. Okay. As far as the large shoulders on top here, I'm just going to glaze this color on. These edges here. And with grays, it's not so much about creating the contrast as much as it's about just creating the change of color, if that makes sense, going from highlight to shadow. And gray is pretty forgiving when it comes to cleaning up edges and stuff like that. It blends. It's not that it blends easy. It just the hard lines and blends are easy to cover up when you make a mistake. Okay. Start to see some of the shadow taking effect there. Right. Work a little more on these legs now. Very thin coats at this point, Anthony. Just trying to get the initial shading color just down right now. She does have some leggings here, I notice. We didn't talk about what color we were going to do those, so I'm going to have to think about the color scheme here for a minute while I'm painting and figure out what will work with that. And I'm going to mix up a little bit more here. Work this into the edge on the fingers. Probably be using some black too, I think, here at some point as well. Especially on some of these deep hard lines that I'm painting right now. And mostly, Anthony, right here around these arms where there's just some really fine, intricate detail. I've really just thinned this paint down to the point that it's almost a wash, and I'm just kind of washing it into the cracks and the crevices and the details, because you know, when I start working with the highlights, I can pick things out a little bit more. although this one does need to be a little stronger.
No?
Mix this up a little thinner, get that down in there. There we go. Right. Really, just at this point, I'm just kind of going around and getting all these dark spots, getting all these lines in. Thin this out a little bit for this waistline here. Come back and recapture that a little bit more for the or with the highlight and the base color. There we go. Alright, so a lot of our shadows are done now. Now we want to start building some highlights. And we don't want to. You don't want to jump straight into the Troll Blood highlight. That's the color I'm recommending here for your highlights. What we want to do is start with some Great Coat Gray mixed with the Troll Blood highlight. So probably a 1-to-1 is what we're looking for. Okay. So 1 part Troll Blood highlight, 1 part Great Coat Gray. Someone else is asking a question too. It looks like on the Twitch, they're asking, oh, they're just replying to what I'd said earlier about the worst color scheme I painted. He wants to know what the clashing, what's the worst color scheme I painted where the colors clashed. You know, honestly, I don't know if I've had a situation where what the client wanted just visually was going to look horrible. I've definitely had some situations where it was some very strong colors, like a purple and a green, you know, and it was creating just a really loud paint scheme. I've had that a couple times, but I've never just had someone come and say, like, you know, they want, I don't know, what colors would clash, red and purple, you know. Or a paint scheme like yellow and, gosh, yellow goes with everything though. You know, I don't know, I just never really had that happen yet. So yeah, sorry I can't give a better story there for you. So here's what our mixture of Great Coat Gray and Troll Blood highlight look like. It's a nice, cool, lighter gray. Okay, you still have definitely some of the blue undertones in there, but you can see that's going to be a nice gray, nice highlight color. And what we want to do here is, again, we're just going to glaze this on, focusing mostly on the edges. just kind of like we did with the orange. Okay. And this will just kind of help break up some of these armor plates so that visually people can see what's going on. And this is just really the first highlight. We'll probably come back and pass over all these spots with pure troll-blood highlight once we're done. This is just to kind of establish and rough in where these highlights are going to be. Okay. Up here on these top shoulders here, I'm actually going to mix a little bit of the shadow color and a little bit of the highlight color to give me a little bit of a darker gray, closer to what the greatcoat gray looked like. And I'm just going to use that on the edges here. To start building the highlight a little bit more. And then add a little bit more of the highlight color in now. Almost like I'm layering this edge. That way we're getting a nice contrast and change in color right there next to these two armor plates. Okay, looks pretty good. Little belt here, just putting some highlight color on that. And then top of this ridge right here on the breastplate. Add a little bit of color there. See how that's coming along? It's looking pretty good. And I'm just using the edge of my brush here, Anthony, to pick out the highlights on the fingers. The edge of the armor plates on our gauntlet. Edge of the armor plate here on around the waist. And then on the tops of these legs here, again using just the edge of the brush, just get these edges. It's okay if you're a bit rough with the highlight at this point. You can always go back and smooth things out later. There we go. We're starting to get somewhere here. Now for the final highlight, we're going to go Troll Blood highlight again. And what I want you to do, put a drop of it on your wet palette, and then take your brush, put it into that first base color, get yourself a little bit of a glob there, and mix that in to, let me bring my wet palette over here so you can see. Here is your shadow color, or your first highlight color. Here's the Troll Blood with just a little bit of that mixed in there. I'm going to add just a little bit more. Just go down just a little further. There we go. That's getting closer to what we want there. I'm afraid if we go straight to Troll Blood highlight, it's just going to be too big of a jump and create too big of a transition. Now this one really, you really want to keep this one right on the edge. Because it's going to, it's just going to create so much of a jump, even with it diluted down a little bit like that, that we just want to use it a little more sparingly than our other highlight color. Okay, along the fingers on the armor. Edges of the armor, just like we did with the gray before, but really try sticking mostly to that edge. Just adding a little bit here on the edges of the arm. Now on the edges of this armor plate on her leg. Edge of the foot a bit there. A bit there. Alright, and that's that's about as far as we're going to go highlight wise on her. Don't think we need to go much further. And we're at about an hour now almost that we've been going with you here, Anthony, so I'm actually going to wrap this up here for now. When we come back on Issyra for part 3, we'll do the brown cloak here. Okay, we'll do the brown cloak here, and then on the back we'll also do these details on her back there, and then we'll paint the gems in the face, and that hopefully won't take more than about the hour. And if we finish early, we'll get started on Imperatus. Otherwise, we'll finish her up next time and then go with Imperatus after that. So Anthony, if you have any questions, make sure to email me and let me know. For those of you watching on YouTube or live, if you have questions, please email them to redmodeling@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on Facebook at facebook.com/redmodelingpaint. Don't go anywhere, guys. I need about 5 minutes to reset for my next project, which we're going to bring out some more some more cricks, and I'm going to be working a little bit on Deathjack. Well, actually, Denegra first, and then we'll go to Deathjack if we have time. And then after that, we're going to be working on some Bradigus. So if you guys have any questions, again, feel free to email me, redmodeling@gmail.com. Don't go anywhere, guys. I'll be right back. Thanks.